everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we have one of my favourite videos. I did this last year and I loved it, so we're doing it again, and it's a book video. If you are new to the channel, hello, I'm Sarah. I love books. I have I'm going to call it a reading disorder. It's not a reading disorder, it's a visual processing disorder, but it affects my reading. So I don't necessarily read quickly, but I have a disorder that affects my reading. I always just like to say that in my book videos because I read a lot slower than a lot of other people. So today we are doing the books that I read in 2020. There aren't that many. I said in my previous video of goals for the year that I set myself a goal of 15 books last year. I didn't hit it. I read 12. I thought I'd read 11, but Goodreads just missed one of my books off for some reason, so I've read 12. So we have 12 books to review today. This might be a long video, but I'm going to try and keep it short and snappy. If you want any more in-depth reviews for any of these books, comment below and I will do it. But I'm going to try and keep it short and snappy because I can talk about books forever. Like, I can talk about them for a long time. So I'm going to try and keep it to the point. So yeah. We're going to do it in chronological order. I have the help of Goodreads on my phone to remind me, because without it, I'd not have a clue what I've read. They're going to keep me in chronological order. This year, because of everything that went on, like the first book that I read feels like I read it like 3 years ago. So I'm glad I have Goodreads. I'm going to link all of the books in my description box below. They're going to take you to my affiliate page on bookshop.org. That is a website that donates money to local bookshops. So it supports independent bookshops rather than money going to big corporations that just don't necessarily need it right now. I'm really trying to support smaller businesses with everything that's going on, so I'll leave the links to these books to bookshop.org. It's a brilliant website. I've bought off it. It works exactly the same as Waterstones. You don't have to do anything, you just buy the book and then they donate the money. You can even pick the bookshop that you want it to go to, so they're a good site. But yeah, we'll start. The first book that I read this year, what was it, is The Couple Next Door. I was behind the hype on this one. This was like the #1 bestseller last year. I was behind the hype. I had it for ages and then just didn't read it. So this book is by Sarah-Louise. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I'm gonna go with that. So like I say, it was a bestseller last year, so it was a popular book. It's a thriller, if you guys don't know. It's kind of like, yeah, I can only describe it as a thriller. It doesn't have a murder in. Does it have a murder in? No, it's more like a mystery kind of thing. I love books with twists. If you haven't watched any of my videos before, I am very much books that have a twist, thrillers, some non-fiction stuff. There's a few non-fiction ones in here, but it's mainly thrillers, and this was really good. It was, I wouldn't say it's like the best thriller I've ever read. Like, it was probably worth the hype, but it wasn't like the best thriller I've ever read. There was a lot of twists in it. Like, there wasn't just one, there was quite a few, and it was really good. I finished it relatively quickly, I think, because it was just an easy read. Like, it was a really good read. So yeah, should I rate them? Should I rate them? Oh, I rate them on Goodreads. Let's tell you what I rated this one. This is out of a 5-star. Oh, I didn't rate this one. Amazing, well done, Sarah. I would probably give it a 4 out of 5. It was a really good read. The second book I read this year was Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I've read how many Gillian Flynn? I've only read 2 Gillian Flynn books. I read Sharp Objects, and I think this is the second one actually, because I haven't read Gone Girl. Right, this woman is all kinds of messed up, but oh my god, does it make her books amazing. Like, she's messed up, but it's so good. Like, if you aren't into dark books, don't read this because it is very dark, but it was really good. I really like Gillian Flynn. I love the twisted way her mind works, and this again was a twisted book, but the story was good. It's a long story. Like, when I'm thinking back to reading it, there's a lot in it. It's not a quick read, it is quite long, but it is really good. I'll leave it there because I don't want to say much about it because it has some really good, it's just a really good book. I'll say a little bit, I should have said that about the last one actually. Really quickly, The Couple Next Door is about, how much does it give away on this? Yeah, it says it. A daughter goes missing while a couple is at next door's party, like a dinner party. The baby goes missing and it's about trying to find the baby and who took the baby and stuff like this. This one is about a woman who moved away from her hometown. Her brother was put in prison for massacring her family. She goes back to the hometown to do a report, I think it was. Oh no, that was Sharp Objects. Why does she go back? Oh yeah, a group of people come up to her saying that her brother's innocent, and then she starts investigating her family's murder, and she goes back to her hometown and she finds out loads of stuff. It was really good. I'd probably give that a 5 out of 5. It was a really good book. Messed up, but a good book. The next one I read is the first non-fiction book of the year. So this is The Path by Professor Michael Pewitt and Christine Gross-Low. This was basically looking at Chinese philosophers and taking out bits of like lessons of life from them. It's quite a small book. It took me quite a while though because it can be a little bit difficult to understand some of the concepts in there. I'd say it was good, but I don't know, my mind couldn't agree with some of the concepts in there, and it does make you think. It's a good book. I wouldn't say it blew me away though. I don't know if I gave this one a rating on Goodreads. Yeah, I was gonna 3 out of 5 I rated that. It's interesting, don't get me wrong. It makes you think about things in different ways maybe, but I think there's some things in there that I already thought that way anyway, so it wasn't like mind-blowing. But it was a good book. I got this one at Waterstones when it was like all over the you know how they have like little booths and they have like one book in all of the shelves and they're like, buy this book. I bought it when it was like that. But it was alright. I would recommend it. Would I recommend it? I probably wouldn't recommend it, to be completely honest, but it is a good book. If you like things that make you think of different ways and learning about Chinese philosophers, it was really good because there's so many Chinese philosophers. It goes through like different ones and goes through their whole philosophy and then another one and then their whole philosophy. So it was interesting, but I wouldn't read it again. Next book is The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney. So this one, it is quite a big book, but when I think back of it, I can't remember why it's this big. I enjoyed it. It was a good book to read, but I found it a little bit predictable. Like I kind of knew what was going to happen, and I feel like it wasn't written in a way for you to not know what was going to happen. It's quite obvious what's going to happen, but I don't know, there were little twists in it that I was like, oh, all right, okay. But it wasn't just like, wow. It was like, right, yeah, fair. But it was interesting. There's a very interesting house in it that has some very interesting tech in, which is probably all I can take away from it. I gave this a 3 out of 5. So it was like, it wasn't a waste of time reading it. It wasn't bad. It was still like it was a good read. I keep saying that, I need to stop saying that. It was a good book to read, but it wasn't like amazing. I bought it for the cover. I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I do. I very much do, and it's disgusting. But I bought it because it was a really nice cover. But it was alright. It's interesting because it goes through 2 different people in this same house. So there's a house and it's kind of like it's an amazing rental opportunity kind of thing, but there are very strict rules that you have to live by in this house. And it goes from like a woman like 20 years ago, no, it can't have been 20 years ago, like 10 years before, and then a woman now, and it goes through these different women's experiences in the house, and then the woman finds out what happens to the other woman. It was interesting, it was, and you can kind of see the parallels and stuff. It was a good book, but I gave it a 3 out of 5. The next book is The House on the Lake by Nuala Elwood. I actually really enjoyed this book. It wasn't like, it didn't take me long to read. I think I read it in like 2 days, which is really quick for me, like really quick for me. It's again a thriller. It's about this woman who is trying to, how much does it give away on the blurb? I never know how much to give away in case it's kind of like that's the secret. Yeah, so this woman needs to escape from her life and she goes to stay in this woman's house. that she knows in the Yorkshire Dales. Is it Yorkshire Dales? In Yorkshire. And she stays in this house with her son, and it's about, I don't know how to describe it without giving away. What does she say? It says, but when a woman from the local villages comes to visit them, Lisa realizes that she and Joe, which is her son, aren't as safe as she thought. It's like, what secrets has Rowan Isle House and her friend kept hidden all these years? So it's kind of like discovering the secret of the house, because this house is like a bit like old and left to its own devices. Like, it's disgusting. She's living in basically a derelict house. It is a good story. I gave it 3 out of 5 on Goodreads, and I can't remember why I didn't give it 4. I think it was because I didn't like the ending. I didn't like how it finished, but I also guessed the twist very early on, but I do that a lot, unfortunately. I know what's going to happen a lot of the time, but it didn't make it any less bad. It was still a good twist. It's just I guessed what it was. So yeah, I gave that a 3 out of 5, but I would recommend this one. The next book that I read is The Secret by Rhonda, I almost hit myself in the face there if you didn't catch that. Rhonda Byrne? I don't know. I feel, again, another one. I was behind the trend on this one. It feels like everyone's read this. If you don't know what this is about, this is a non-fiction book about how to manifest and how to bring things into your life through the power of thought, essentially. I think that, how do they do it? Yeah, it's like a secret that's been passed down through loads of people. The book itself is written quite strangely. So there's not a narrative, there's an author going all the way through it, but then she brings in different people, like professors and people who used manifestation and things like that. It was an interesting read. Some of the bits I felt were hard to swallow. Like, I was a bit like, right, okay. But I think that's just because obviously I've got a science-based mind, so I think it was a bit, some of it was a little bit hard, but I enjoyed it, and it has, I wouldn't say it's changed the way I thought, but it's helped me stay on that wavelength of trying to bring positivity into my life and think positive and manifest things and stuff. So I'd say it's a good read. I feel like I would recommend it and see what you make of it. I wouldn't say you have to believe in all of it. I wouldn't say that everybody's going to believe in it, but I think it's a good read to see what you think of it, if that makes sense. I gave this, what did I give it on? I think I gave it 4. Yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5 just because it's a really interesting concept that I am gonna try and bring into my life. I try and think about stuff that's in there a lot, so it was a good book to read. The next one is the one that Goodreads left out of mine. Yeah, I'm not sure why. I think I read this now. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I did. So this was The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy Leftieri. It was a very good book. It was a very emotional book. So if you don't know what this is about, this follows the story of a refugee, an asylum seeker coming to the UK from Aleppo. It's very emotional, and I was saying to Jack, I think everybody should read this book so everybody understands what asylum seekers go through, because I already feel very passionate about this anyway, with asylum seekers getting grief when they come to this country. I think it's the most disgusting thing that asylum seekers can get grief when, of course, they're going to try and find somewhere else to go in their countries in such the state that it is. Like, I hate how people give them grief for it, and I think everyone should read this book to understand it, because the way it's written is really amazing. The author actually works with asylum seekers, so they know a lot about this, and it's just heartbreaking. Like, it's heartbreaking. Not the story is great, and I don't want to say how it ends, but it's not a heartbreaking story. It's a lovely story, but it's just heartbreaking knowing that this is just one story that could have happened in so many other people. And I think you should buy this book for somebody who thinks that asylum seekers shouldn't be coming to this country, because it makes you understand their viewpoint and what they have to go through to even get to this country, and then to get this country and then be treated with all the grief that they do is vile. Like, it's vile. So I enjoyed this. It's just so sad. Like, if you're not wanting to feel sad from a book, maybe don't read this one, but it's an amazing book. And I mean, look how beautiful, I don't know if you can see because of the reflection, look how beautiful the cover is. Like, it's stunning. I didn't rate this one, but I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5, just purely because it is sad and it doesn't make you feel amazing. But is that fair? I'll give it a 5 out of 5. It isn't about the narrative with this though, I would say. It's not about this, like, I wouldn't say the story is amazing, because it's not. It's reality, but the like moral behind it, it's brilliant. So I would really recommend this book. The next one that I read was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Obviously it's a classic, you can see it's in the Penguin Classics covers. I struggled to get through this, I'm not gonna lie. It was a big book. I started this in the first lockdown and it took me, I think, the whole lockdown to finish it. It's a big book. I didn't realise it's split into 2 books. This has got both of them in, and it was just, I don't know, I found it a difficult read, but I find some things just more difficult than others. Obviously some people love this book. I thought it was alright. It was okay. It was very, like, every chapter had a moral kind of thing, but you're gonna get that from a classic book, I think, and what the type of story it is. I read this and then watched the movie, and I quite enjoyed it. I think I preferred the book, but the movie was amazing. It was really good. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 apparently. I probably wouldn't give it a 5 out of 5. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5, just because it was a difficult read and it was long. It was long, but the stories are good going through it. If you don't know what Little Women is about, it basically follows 4 sisters going from when they are young to when they are in adulthood. That's why it's called, like, Little Women. It shows them growing up and it shows them all the things that they deal with, and it does have a story going through it. I think sometimes it's hard to know whether an old classic book is going to have, like, a story going through it, and it does. Like, it follows the sisters' stories when they're together and when they're apart, so that's what that's about. And I would say it's a good book. I wouldn't say it's one of those ones that you have to read, but it is a good book, and it has a lot of, this book's going to be battered by the end of this. It has a lot of morals and stuff in it, so yeah, Little Women. I felt quite proud of myself reading that. It's the first, like, classic book I've read. I read another classic book this year, which is coming up, but this is, like, the first classic book I've read, so yeah. The next book was The Constant Princess by Philippa Gregory. This was another book that took me a long time. Like, it was a big, thick book, and it was a long story. Like, it goes from the beginning of Catherine of Aragon's life to the end of Catherine of Aragon's life, and it took me a long time. So I love Philippa Gregory. I love the genre she's in, where it's like non-fiction but dramatized and made fiction, if that makes sense. So it follows, like, a true story and then dramatizes it. So she wrote The Other Boleyn Girl and things like that, and I love this type of book. It's either thriller or, like, dramatized history. Like, that's kind of my 2 go-tos. I've read 2 of her books, and I've read a ton of other like dramatized history books, and yeah, this was one of them. This is actually number 6 in the Plantagenet series, but I didn't realize that until after I started reading it. So we've started with Catherine of Aragon. It was interesting. I go through phases of being obsessed with certain people in history. I did Queen Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was one of those ones where it's like, I'd die for Anne Boleyn, but it was really interesting hearing Catherine of Aragon's story. Obviously it's dramatized, so it's what Philippa Gregory imagined could have happened. It's not, like, fact, but it was based on, like, facts, if that makes sense. I researched it after I read it, and there's a lot of like fact in there, but it's just good how much Philippa Gregory dramatizes it. The only problem I have with this book is that it focuses a lot on the beginning of her life, and then it kind of just really quickly in 2 chapters, was it 2 chapters? It was a short amount of time going through the end of her life, and I feel like that's such an interesting part, like where she just got pied off at Anne Boleyn and the king created divorce and created a new religion for her, and it just kind of skims over that, and I was a bit like, are you kidding? What? So yeah, that's the only issue I have with that book, but the rest of it's really good. I didn't know anything that was in here already, so if you're interested in, like, you might not be from England, if you're interested in England's history with the royal family, I feel like this is a good place to start. This is what got me into history. So I think I gave this a 3 out of 5, or did I give it a 4 out of 5? yeah, I gave it 3 out of 5 just because it was so long and it skimmed over the end quite quickly. But Philippa Gregory's a great writer, it's just they're long. Okay, next up is the last fiction book, and it's The Secret Garden. I had this, so I love this book because I don't know if you can read in there. This was actually given to me by my year 3 teacher when she left my school and I left. Was it I left the school or when she left the book? So I actually have an inscription in there from her from Christmas 2004. So I love the fact that I have this book and I love it for that sentimental value, but I never read it because I don't know, I think I just always found that I had something else I wanted to read more. But when I read Little Women, I was like, no, I need to read more classic books. I've never read The Secret Garden. I had The Secret Garden. I actually thought I would read it as well because it would be a quick book. It didn't, it took me a while. I don't know if it's just old books, the language that they use, I find it more difficult, but it took me a while again. I would say it feels like an old book. There is racism in this. I'm not going to judge over it. Like, I'm not going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Skim over it? I don't know. There's racism in there. So if you aren't comfortable reading racism, don't read it. It's not heavily in the book, but there are little bits of it here and there, like it uses the N-word. I didn't enjoy it. I know it's of the time, but it's not an excuse. So yeah, it has racism in there, but I don't know. I feel like it was a very long story for like not a lot to happen, really. Like I don't know, it skimmed around it a lot. And if you don't know what this is about, a girl goes from living in India, her parents die, and goes to live with her uncle, and her uncle has this massive house. He doesn't really go anywhere, she doesn't see him, so she starts exploring the garden and she finds a secret garden, and then she also finds her cousin. So, and then it's all just about them in the garden. If you've seen the recent movie that came out on Sky, it's completely different. Well, not completely different, but it's very different. This is very more basic than the Sky adaptation, I think, but it's still a good book. I feel like it's one that maybe, like, it's a nice classical book to read. It's just a nice family book, like nothing really exciting happens in it. It's long, it goes around the topic for a while. I won't read it again, but it was good to read. I didn't give this one a rating again. I'd probably give this a 3 out of 5. Like, it wasn't bad, but I wouldn't say it was amazing. Like, it wasn't one of the ones where it was like I couldn't put it down. It was just the book that it was, an old classic book again. Okay, the last two that I have are both non-fiction. Which one did I read first? Sex Ed, right. Sex Ed by Ruby Rao. I've already mentioned this in one of my videos. I think I mentioned it in the Sex with One Person. Yeah, the Sex with One Person video. And this book is just amazing. It is brilliant. I picked this up because I was in Waterstones, and obviously if you're new to the channel, I like to talk about sex a lot. I like to educate about sex a lot. I saw this cover and I was like, oh, that seems like a little bit of me. So picked it up, had a quick look through. Not a spoiler, but it has the best illustrations. Let me find a good one. Like, it has these beautiful illustrations in that show very graphically sex, unapologetically. It's got, like, there's some vulvas in it, and I like to think that I know a bit about sex. I'm not saying I know a lot by any means. There is a lot of the way to go for me for that, but I know a bit about sex. I've taught sex ed, things like that, but this taught me some stuff, and this is very much a sex education, completely for adults kind of sex education, because it's graphic. It tells you how to give a blowjob, it tells you how to lick someone out. It is that kind of a sex education book. It's not just about STDs and all that kind of thing. It's proper sex education. So honestly, I would recommend this book to anyone. I don't want people to be like, oh, but I know about sex. Even if you think you know about sex, please read this book, because there are so many valuable lessons in there. It is very inclusive, also very inclusive for any gender, any kind of sexual desire. It doesn't like shame fetishes, anything like that. It is so inclusive, and it's just a really fun read as well. Like, it's so beautiful. Like, look at the pages. I know that's bright because of the ring light, but it's such an easy read. I read this in like 3 days, if that, and it's just brilliant. It's got little activities in there if you want to do that. I didn't do them, but it has little activities in there, and I don't know, I think it's just very sex positive, and it tells you to be like unapologetically you in sex, and however you feel is okay in sex. And I don't know, I'd 100% recommend this book. Please go buy it. It's very, very good. Ruby Rare's brilliant. I didn't know who she was until I bought this book. I put it on my Instagram story. Someone messaged me and being like, do you follow Ruby Rare? And I was like, no, let me have a look at it. And now I love her. She's amazing. So yeah, I would recommend this book 100%. I'll give it a 5 out of 5. I'd give it a 6 out of 5 if I could. The last book that we have is Shag, Married, Annoyed. This is my favourite podcast in the entire world. I don't know what I'd do without it. Rosie Ramsey and Chris Ramsey have become like my best friends because I hear their voice every single week. I love them. If you guys don't know what Shag, Married, Annoyed is, it is a podcast from Chris Ramsey and his wife Rosie Ramsey. Chris Ramsey is a comedian from Up Here, so I mean that's just a bonus. So Up Here, I mean in well, it's not from Northumberland, but in the northeast, which is where I'm from and live. So he does a podcast alongside his wife. I don't even want to say it's his podcast, it's not, it's their podcast, and they basically just talk and have so much fun and just laugh with each other. They do beefs with each other, so they'll tell each other why they're pissed off with each other that week. They will answer questions from the public, and they are explicit. Like, this is not a family friendly podcast. They are explicit. They have questions about sex, they have questions about dogging, questions about shit, questions about office polls, they have questions about everything. And they did a book together because they've got just so many questions and stuff. So they have like a chapter on like different topics. So hang on, let me find a chapter and I'll tell you what it is. The first one I come up to. One night stands. That's one of the chapters. Let's go to another one. Dark days. Like, they have so much in there and it's just so fun. Like, it's funny. Like, if you need a laugh, read this book and listen to that podcast because it's amazing. It's like the #1 podcast in the UK, so you probably already listened to it. But yeah, I got this book when it came, well, Jack bought me this book when it came out because I love the podcast so much, and I didn't get around to reading it for ages. It's wrote in, like, they both write it, so Rosie has one font and then Chris has another font, and it works really well. I haven't read a book like that since I read Ant and Dec's biography when I was like 10, but this works really well, and you hear their voices in your head if you listen to the podcast anyway. So if you haven't read that already, I would recommend it. I would give it a 5 out of 5. So yeah, and that is all the books. This has been a long video. I apologize, and I apologize to you if you're at the end. I appreciate you for making it to the end. If you did, thank you so much for watching, guys. Like I said at the beginning, if you want to see any more like in-depth book breakdowns for any of them, feel free to comment below and I'll get onto it. If you have any more book content videos you want to see from me, please let me know. I love filming book video content, so I will 100% do it. But yeah, I'm gonna stop babbling now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new, please don't forget to subscribe. I'm nearly at 1,000 subscribers and that is so exciting. So yeah, please subscribe if you are new. Thank you for watching again, chickpeas, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye.